The meeting of the General Plan Subcommittee is called to order. I'm going to start off with roll call. Ramiro Maldonado.
Present.
Amarantz Lee. Here. Eric Rodriguez. Cliff Robbins.
Here.
Rick Bonilla.
Here.
Adam Lorraine is excused. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. We really appreciate everybody's time and effort in joining us tonight and sharing their ideas. We're happy to be here with a new process tonight, and we hope that we can be more focused in our approach to our different ideas and how we need to address the issues facing the city. And I just want to say also that this is a learning experience for all of us, and hopefully we can approach it as a learning experience. I'm going to ask that all of you that would like to speak tonight, please bring your speaker slips to the table as soon as possible so that we can get an idea of how many people would like to speak and figure out how long each person will have. And I will remind you throughout the meeting, we are going to ask that all slips be up here at the front desk before we begin the public comment period. Tonight's meeting is going to address several different issues and culminate in the revised draft vision statement. After our general public comment, we're going to have an update and committee organization. We're going to do some brainstorming on outreach process, and we are going to review the vision statement. I'm now going to open up public comments on items not on the agenda. So that is items that do not pertain to the vision statement or any outreach that we may need to do or any committee organization. Do we have any slips for general comment period? So I understand there's no one who wants to speak in the general public comment. Okay, we'll close public comment period. Julia, I'd like to turn it over to you for our new business.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and run through a quick overview. It's also, the information also outlined in the agenda. So a status update, we'll do introduction of new staff and consultants. We'll also report on direction that we received from council at the January 22nd City Council meeting. We'll also go over just a reminder on roles and responsibilities, including talking about information that we got regarding the Brown Act and communications for GPS members. And it's just a reminder, it's not anything that's new information. We'll also cover, very briefly the next steps in terms of the existing conditions report, vice chair selection. Then we'll go ahead and hand off to Joanna in regards to the outreach brainstorm. And then we'll come back to the draft vision statement and then lead that through hearing input from the GPS members on the revised draft vision statements. Yeah. So just real quickly, I wanted to recognize some of the staff who are here tonight, and one planning commissioner that Diana Whitaker, I saw you come in way in the back. Planning Commissioner, she's here to support and listen to the community comments. Drew Corbett, our new city manager, is also here today, along with Brad Underwood, our Public Works Director, sitting next to Drew. We also have Kohar Kajan, Community Development Director. Wendy Lau, she's new to the general plan team. She's Associate Planner for the city. And then Joanna Jensen, Principal in Charge from PlaceWorks. And did you want to do a brief introduction?
I can just quickly introduce myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Joanna Jansen. I'm a principal with PlaceWorks. We're the city's consultant team helping with the general plan update. I'm a colleague of Carrie Stone from PlaceWorks, and I will be the principal in charge of the consultant team going forward. Just briefly about me, since this is our first meeting together, I've been with PlaceWorks and doing planning work for 20 years as of June. And in that time, I have managed quite a number of general plan updates. That's kind of what I do for a living, including general plans in Palo Alto, Morgan Hill, Los Gatos, San Leandro, Vacaville, and others going back for over 10 years. So I have a lot of general plan experience. I'm really excited to be here in San Mateo, and working with all of you. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you. And I also wanted to recognize Roscoe. He's taking notes tonight. So he's also part of the staff team. And Sherry, sitting at the far end, is managing the speaker forms. So another reminder, please go ahead and hand in your forms before the public comment period. Thank you. Okay. So just a brief update regarding the January 22nd City Council meeting. Staff provided update to Council regarding all the progress that has been made to date. Council heard a lot of community feedback regarding the work that has been done, some of the issues and concerns that the community members had, as well as comments from the General Plan Subcommittee members themselves. And so the City Council as a whole directed staff to do a course correction. Part of this is to focus on having a high quality, inclusive sort of community outreach process. So more opportunities for community members and any other folks that are interested in the city's general plan process that may not be here tonight but have additional opportunities to be able to participate and come to future meetings. So that's high quality outreach and inclusive process. A lot of that also delves into extending the project timeline and making sure that there is additional time for GPS meetings, so longer meetings, more opportunities again for discussion and comments from the community. Part of the things that we also heard is just reinforcing the opportunities for General Plan Subcommittee group to provide additional comments on the revised draft vision statement. And so that's the primary purpose for today's meeting. We also wanted to talk about just in general, and I've pushed the slide a little bit forward, and this graphic is actually in your packet for today, and some of you may have noticed it posted on the city's website. The various roles and responsibilities that are part of this process. So it's not, city staff or city consultants, the folks that are in this meeting today. It's also the broader community, as a whole. And so we have the City Council as the final approval body, Planning Commission as the formal recommendation body to the City Council, General Plan Subcommittee providing additional opportunities for discussion and community input and feedback. But all of this is required, and it really necessitates the community members being involved and participating in this process. So we're trying to provide as many opportunities as possible for folks to be able to engage and provide feedback. In addition, some of the information regarding a status update, we wanted to just highlight that we got comments for changes and additional information to clarify the information that's in the existing conditions report. That report, the series of reports was shared at GPS meeting number 2. So we're working on those, and the March 27th meeting is when we will take that information and share it with the community and the GPS members. So one thing that with Mr. Lorraine's absence, we just wanted to go ahead and announce that he has withdrawn from the subcommittee. And so there is a need to fill that, to replace that position. At the time of packet production, we were not aware that in terms of the process, but the council has indicated that the council has agendized this for next Monday's meeting, which is March 4th. And at that meeting, the council will select the new 7th position. So staff is actually recommending that the GPS hold off on selection of the vice chair until the next meeting. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Julia. So I'm just going to speak briefly on the item for GPS discussion tonight that has to do with public outreach. As Julia mentioned, one of the really strong messages that emerged from both the December GPS meeting and the January 22nd council meeting is a strong desire on the part of the community and the council and the GPS to hear from a really broad cross-section of San Mateans and even more people than we have already heard from in this process. So As you already saw on the roles and responsibilities slide, we really feel that an important resource here for us as your general plan team is your knowledge of the community, your connections, your relationships, and your ideas for how we can engage people as GPS members. So we want to pose these questions to you about who we should be reaching out to, how we can reach out to those people, with a particular focus on folks who are not involved, folks who are not here tonight. How can we help them understand what this process is, what the issues are that we're going to be tackling, why it's important to them and their lives, and how can we make this relevant and engaging and accessible to a really broad range of people here in San Mateo, especially folks who we haven't managed to reach yet. So we're going to be returning to this as part of your discussion for the GPS, and hopefully we'll get some great ideas from our community members who are here as well. In addition, while we're talking about public outreach, I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of a new feature that we've added to the General Plan website. So the General Plan update website is strivesanmateo.org. And I hope you're all familiar with that. If you're not, it's a great place for resources and meeting information. But going forward, we're going to be posting public comments. We have, as of today, posted all the public comments that we have received to date, and we're going to be keeping this up to date. And if you submit comments in writing, they're going to be added to this. If you can get them to us by the Friday before every GPS meeting, we'll have them up. After that, due to the turnaround time, we're not sure we can commit to having them up before the meeting, but they will be posted. We will post all of the comments that we receive on this site, and we'll be keeping this regularly updated. So you can see that if you go to strivesanmateo.org and then documents and input, there's a meeting input tab, and this is what you'll find. So every comment is individually listed with the date and the last name of the commenter. So we're trying to make sure everybody has access to all the same information that we receive, and we really very much appreciate the time that folks take to put these comments together and send them to us. So we're thankful for that, we honor that, and we are sharing that with everybody so that you can all have access to it going forward. So then I also wanted to talk about the other kind of topic that the GPS is going to be delving into tonight. Again, the vision statement. We're going to talk about the content of San Mateo's revised draft vision statement. But in addition to that, I wanted to start off with my experience as kind of the general plan practitioner who's done this with a lot of different communities, and just talk about the role of a vision statement in the general plan and in a general plan process more broadly. So when we work on a vision statement, I think the vision statements that are most powerful and most effective, in my experience, tend to be relatively short and succinct, and give people very quickly an idea of what San Mateo is about. Why are we doing this general plan update? Where do we want to be in 2040? And it really, one thing that we heard clearly from the council and from the public and the GPS is that we also want our vision statement to express not just where we want to get, but why we want to be there. And why and where, what our values are that are kind of urging us in a particular direction. So that's part of what the vision statement, the revised vision statement attempts to do. We're very interested in hearing your feedback on that. We want it to be pretty high level. All that said, I think one of the criticisms or concerns that we had about the previous draft was that it was a little bit too detailed and too specific. So that detail and that specificity will definitely come as part of this process. But at the vision statement level, we want to keep it aspirational and inspirational. So what you have in front of you tonight to discuss GPS and to react to members of the public is a lot more brief and high level. And the vision statement it's not a policy. It's not going to be something that you can look at and necessarily say that this, because of the vision statement, then this project may do X or it may not do Y. It doesn't get down to that level of regulation, but it does inform and influence the thinking of your staff and of your decision makers when they are considering individual actions. And that's the role that we want it to play going forward. So with that, I will let Julia walk you through a little bit more of the content, and then when we close our presentation and we've had a chance to hear public comments, then the GPS is going to be doing really hands-on work with us to try to make any changes to the vision statement as part of your meeting tonight.
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So, You should have picked up a copy of this at the counter and also seen it on live. It is completely reformatted. A lot of those suggestions that came from the community and GPS at the last meeting, we've tried to incorporate. Again, this is focusing on high level, aspirational in terms of the vision statement. And I'll just go ahead and read it real quickly in case some of you did not pick up a copy. So our vision, San Mateo is a vibrant, livable, and diverse community that respects the quality of its neighborhoods, fosters a flourishing economy, is committed to equity, and is a leader in environmental sustainability. Following that are a series of values. These were basically put together based on a lot of the community comments that have been gathered through emails, people who have submitted comments and came and spoke at all the past General Plan Subcommittee meetings that we had in September of last year, October and December of last year, as well as all the series of vision statement workshops. So we had a series of about 2 large workshops and then a series of about 8 or 9 neighborhood level community meetings. So I want to thank SMUHA, the Neighborhood Association, for helping us organize some of those meetings, as well as the Congregational Church for hosting one of the meetings. And so a lot of community comments came in, and with that, we've drafted, based on the comments, these values. And so we're hoping to share these tonight, hear your feedback on these values and the vision statement. And then before we go on to sort of the discussions and comments, hearing comments from the community, I want to just go through next steps on the vision statement. So one of the things that we are doing with the website is to try to keep all of the input available online so the community can see it, as well as updating it more frequently so that the GPS members, City Council, Planning Commission, anybody in the community be able to read that. I can tell you it was a lot of work trying to gather all the comments. We had email communications, letters coming into different people, different departments. And so I want to apologize ahead of time. You know, there were some things that were missed. So I'm hoping between this meeting and the next meeting, if you see on this website, you know, the new web page where we've missed something, please let us know. You know, we are really committed to trying to make sure we get everything. But I can tell you, we triple checked 3 times, and still we missed one comment. One of the members of the audience just came up and dropped off a note. And so I want to apologize ahead of time. So one request for help from everybody. If you have submitted comments and somehow it's not posted here, don't hesitate. Please go ahead and email us. General Plan at City of San Mateo is the ideal place to send your comments so that it's not going to, you know, a lot of comments ended up in my junk mailbox, which is awkward. So please, again, just send your comments to generalplan@cityofsanmateo.org. So again, our goal is to keep all the input and update it regularly on the website so everybody can see. We want to make sure that we also incorporate General Plan Subcommittee comments into the revised vision statement before it goes to the next process. And so part of the exercise for this meeting is to try and experiment with a real time sort of track changes kind of edit mode with this. And Roscoe's going to help us with that. Following this, we will be taking all of the comments and the feedback from the General Plan Subcommittee to the Planning Commission meeting in March. And currently it's scheduled for March 12th, so make a note on your calendars. And then after that, we'll be taking the Planning Commission's recommendations to the City Council for review at the April 1st meeting. So after tonight's meeting, we'll go ahead and put those dates on the project website. So one last reminder, the vision statement will not be final until the general plan adoption. So all throughout the process, if we see changes that are necessary and we get, you know, direction, you know, on that, you know, things can change. So nothing's final until it's adopted. So I think for now I'm going to hand this back to Ellen.
Okay, so now we're going to open our public comment period. How many speaker slips do we have? Let's give every speaker 3 minutes to give us your comments. If you are hearing things in the audience that you are hearing from a speaker and you're in concurrence with that, you can also take that route as well, to just say that I concur with that person in the interest of time. So with that, one more. Does anyone else want to bring their speaker slip up? Okay. Why don't we start off?
First speaker is Leora Ross.
I am here to thank you all, especially the planning staff, for the work that has been done on the draft vision. There are some words in here that we really, really like: diverse, equity, inclusivity, and we look forward to talking about that and what that means for San Mateo. If we want to remain diverse, and we're planning to be diverse, that means that we need to build more homes, and if that is the case, how will people who live there get around? Where are the sites that are appropriate to build those homes, and how tall should those homes be? There's a litany of questions that are in front of us that I think that we look forward to discussing and contributing to the conversation. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and let's do more.
I apologize for reading this out of respect for time on affordable housing. My wife Libby and I are residents of San Mateo for 41 of our 51 married years. Are experiencing a lot of grief every time a new building rises with access only to high rent businesses and wealthy residents. Our hearts break when our San Mateo housing and building monopoly with financial advantage dismisses, excludes, and banishes citizens who lack inordinate wealth. It's tragic downward slope of our county and nation, where 400 people, 3/10,000ths of 1% of our population, own more than 150 million, or 60% of our nation's poorest people. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and our families, African American friends here in San Mateo, are vanishing, banished by property and rental costs with their Pilgrim Baptist Church to the East Bay. I ask airport workers and domestic workers and restaurant staff and office employees, what time did you wake up to come to work in San Mateo? And they commonly say 3, 4 in the morning. Tens of thousands of commuters to and from San Mateo live tortured lives, having to spend 3 or 4 hours each day in their cars, wrecking their family life, health, and spirits, burning fossil fuel and burning out. Honestly, this is also a continuation of racial and cultural exclusion, a meanness, a sign of San Mateo moral and spiritual decline. As sure as Roosevelt's supposed economic incentives were passed into law only because they excluded agricultural and domestic workers, largely people of color, who are largely missing from this room tonight. A Bay Area U.S. congressman recently told me that people in Washington are weak. Until today, San Mateo government has offered the meagerest, tiniest tokens of affordable housing, always favoring the tax base, the golden calf, the city's bank balance. I appeal to you to be better than this weakness of money only. Housing is too important to be left to private enterprise only. If planners can be strong, be moral, be our spiritual best, then San Mateo can be that kind of place too. And finally, please see more than dollars. See the people. See the people who need to live here for their very lives, for who we hope to become our very best vision.
Good evening, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to again comment on the draft general plan update vision statement. I concur with the previous speaker said that this is a very serious time in our community. It's a time of opportunity. It's a time of hope. But I think you guys have put together a pretty good vision statement. I think you've gone a long way in capturing what the comments were from the other people for more than 300 people that you heard from during this process. I'm grateful that staff has pursued a short, concise, yet profoundly humanitarian vision. That's what Lynn talked about, was the humanitarian vision. Having been involved in drafting vision statements myself in both the public and the private sector, I am aware that it first takes a lot of effort, and second, that wordsmithing and rewrites could go on for a long time. I could add a few words to the vision statement to tweak it, but I won't. I think it is great as it is. It's humanitarian, it's forward-looking, and the future. But having worked on general plans and implementations of those for a city in Southern California and in Northern California, I want to draw your attention. I think you already know this, but what lies before us is quite a bit of work to do. And I think that's going to take, honestly, some more staff, because as you get into doing some of the things that have to be done to implement this kind of general plan that you've set in the vision statement, it's going to take more people and more time in order to make this come about. I think this is an important time for the city, an updated general plan, increased recognition of the housing crisis, of global warming. You have new staff and new consultant. I think everything you've done can be a solid foundation, and I encourage you to march forward with the good start you've already had. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thanks for all the work you've done on the general plan, the vision statement so far. I understand that Sure. My name is Jonathan New, and I'm a homeowner here in San Mateo. I understand that the vision statement is high level, but the balance portion strikes me as overly broad. I'm leery of statements that can be used to justify anything. Well-designed and thoughtful are arbitrary and largely in the eye of the beholder, and I would contend this would lead towards more disagreement and ultimately inaction. I'd prefer to see something bold that we would strive to balance, such as a jobs-housing ratio or the needs of citizens with different incomes. Thank you.
Arnold Rodman, and he will be followed by Carlo, Gillette.
My name is Arnold Rodman. I've been a resident of San Mateo for a lot of years. I'm speaking as an individual from my own perspective. And first of all, I'd like to see the existing height limits and density limits maintained within the city. I feel that these limits are important to help maintain the residential character that we've come to live with and come to love, and hopefully our children will enjoy staying here also and not vacate the area like unfortunately a lot of people are doing now. I'd like to see the historical past of the last 40 years roughly of the residential character of the city maintained to ensure high quality conditions in our neighborhoods. Ensure adequate off-street parking and high-density parking structures in the primary downtown shopping areas. The thought of getting on a bicycle or a scooter and going downtown and doing our shopping in the last couple of months is ridiculous. And I think that can be verified with the people who rent motor scooters and bicycles. People need their cars and they need a place to park. And I think the general plan should specify parking structures, high density, that will house the cars necessary to allow the people to go shop. And I think it's very important to find a good balance between jobs that create employment and housing. There's a big imbalance between office space and new housing, and that's part of the reason we have such a large need for new housing, is because it seems more profitable for developers to build office space than it is for them to build housing. Thank you.
I'm Carol Gillette. I just live in San Mateo and have been here for several years, have been in the community many years. In looking at your vision statement. I know how much work it takes to pull that together. You've done a great job trying to encompass many factors and covering the things that are important to all of us. My concerns are just a few small ones. Traffic is a concern. In order for people to stop driving in circles, they have to be able to find a place. And I've been very concerned that we have added housing with no parking, or very minimal housing, very minimal parking. And so people are driving around trying to find a place. We are too diverse a community to rely on public transportation for the whole thing. We need a balance, and that's important. When you're planning housing, please plan, someone has already mentioned it, I thought it was good, a diverse amount of types of housing. If you have a family and you want to move to a high-density place, you cannot live, if you're trying to do an office and children, in a 2-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment. And that's the majority of housing that we seem to be building because we desperately need it. So please look at a mix of the types of housing, some 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. And regarding bicycles and the scooters, having spent a lot of time in San Francisco walking around during the day, they fall over, the little bar sticks out, people fall down. You can't control the people who are riding on them. So bicycles are great, but not the scooters. And with bicycles, please do not take parking and roads for bicycle paths. We need bicycles, I'm not saying that. Share the road, but no road confiscation. And thank you for your hard work. I think you've done a great job.
Hi, I'm Christine Padilla, and I am here on behalf of Build Up for San Mateo County's Children, an initiative to grow and increase childcare. I just wanted to thank you for getting feedback from the community. I've been to a lot of meetings and some of the brainstorming sessions, and we're really happy to see under community life that you're encouraging new developments to incorporate childcare. And I would just urge you to continue on that path, given that it's such a need for so many working families. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Subcommittee, for the opportunity to comment on the draft vision statement. She said, my name is Nancy Schneider, and I'm a homeowner in San Mateo. I moved here about 24 years ago. I was drawn to San Mateo by its more urban, suburban character. I purposely live where I do so that I can walk here to the library, which I did tonight in the rain, and to downtown and to other places. I'd like to thank city staff for your hard work in recrafting the vision statement. It is quite an improvement and is elegant in its simplicity and humanity. I am particularly glad that diversity, inclusivity, and resiliency are included in the values. Now that we have a great vision statement to start, how is the work on the update going to implement it? I hope you keep thinking to the future. We can't go back to the past. We can't even think that we can stay with the status quo. We have to deal with climate change, the climate crisis, and our housing crisis, among other things. Let's make sure the general plan update reflects our values. Thank you for your time. But I wanted to add one thing that I didn't write down. In terms of outreach, some ideas I have is going to the schools. I was involved in a project where went to all the schools because that's where you can get a lot of people, and any kind of organizations, churches, synagogues, street corners, anything.
Good evening, committee members. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Jordan Grimes. I'm a lifelong resident of the 19th Avenue Park neighborhood in San Mateo. I'd like to start tonight just by, I think, doing what a lot of people have. I know it's repetitive, but thanking staff because they really deserve it. Staff from planning, from public works, from basically every department in the city has really worked tirelessly the last, 6 months putting this all together. Especially Julia, who I worked with, putting together the general plan event for the Latino community in North Central. So I really appreciate that. I hope more of those events will happen in the future. I really like the new visioning statement a lot. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I do think I would be remiss if I didn't also say that since it's still open, that we should consider being even bolder. A few things that have happened since the last General Plan Subcommittee meeting. Oregon just passed statewide rent control protections for tenants. Minneapolis, which was talked about a little bit at the last meeting, has banned single-family zoning. I think that's something that we should consider. The CASA Compact was passed by MTC and ABAG and is moving forward, which is a series of renter protections and housing production bills that will help address the housing crisis. I think all of these things are things that should be considered. I also think that it's important to consider San Mateo's history, specifically in regard to housing production over the last 40 years as we move forward. We can't just look back at the last decade and see where we went wrong. This is really a trend that's occurred over several decades. And if you go back and look at newspaper headings, there's a lot of them that talk about the housing crisis of the last 40 years, especially in San Mateo County. So anyway, I thank you all for your time, and I look forward to participating in more of these.
My name is Rick Carlo. I'm 1524 Maple Street. I was born in San Mateo 68 years ago. I've been here my whole life. I've seen everything. I want to thank you all for coming and giving us your ability to show you what you're going to do, and especially the planner who's been in other places and seen things in other cities that have worked well and would have not worked well. So your input and your imminent domain of knowing all kinds of things, your tremendous knowledge of knowing what's going on is very much appreciated. And there are many things that work, and there's many things that don't work. I have heard comments from here to eternity on what we should do here in San Mateo. And one could get sick of hearing about this stuff, but I'm not sick, and I'll keep saying. We have a problem with too many people in the city now with traffic. We just can't move in the morning, and you can't move after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, number one. The wonderful Proposition P, which limits height limits, has kind of helped maintain it so it hasn't gotten worse. And there are people in this room who work with Darth Vader to make these big buildings from here to eternity up in the sky and bring them in, and we're not very happy with it, and we live here and are unappreciative. There is only one solution really to this thing, and this is transportation in and out of the city, and you're going to have to work with the train system to get more trains to stop here more often, and you're going to have to get the boats and ships from the Red and White Fleet or similar accommodations to bring people in and bring them out in waves on ships. And this will reduce the traffic problems a bit. I'm not going to volunteer and say it's South San Francisco over there at Ocean Point, whatever it is, or Redwood City, but these things do work, and also invigoration to continue to put the train across from Redwood City, and Dumbarton Bridge would help, and it would hit Caltrain come up. Your efforts to make things, to build higher buildings and to increase the intensity of what's going on here with density is not appreciated, not wanted, and does not contribute to a solution. But I will say this. Across the street up there at 3rd and El Camino, there are some nicely remodeled buildings on the corner there. If you can aesthetically make things under 55 feet and approve them to look nice, you're not going to hear a complaint. But when you start building things that are really high and make high densities like downtown and want to build something 150 feet, 200 feet is beyond reality for our community. So I don't know if you have the wherewithal to speak with these county officials on transportation, but that is the really only true solution to have effective people come in on transportation and leave. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adam Nugent. I'm a homeowner here. I live in North Central. I'm the president of Handsome, and I'm a landscape architect. I speak for myself. My father ran a nonprofit affordable housing and other services for a long time. So I'm very much influenced by his work. I'm also very much influenced by Minneapolis, where I went to school, undergrad. I want to say that I really appreciate the new vision statement. I really feel that it's something that we can aspire to. I want to strongly encourage and comment on the sustainability portion. San Mateo really should be a leader in sustainability. San Mateo was created not around the car. It's an older city. It was built in the original Greenway, which didn't take a lot of fossil fuels to walk around the original portion of the town. And we can use that old structure and cherish it and build off of it. It is extremely green to build in the traditional fashion. And I think that San Mateo is unique within the Bay Area as one of those places where you can have a very, very good lifestyle while also accommodating a lot more people in a very sustainable fashion. My wife and I, we chose this place out of many places. We've lived in Germany. I've lived in the Middle East when I served. And San Mateo is the place that we want to be. This is where we want to raise our family. And I'm very encouraged by this process. I'm very encouraged by the general plan vision statement. And I really think that we can get together and create a much better place where we focus on the lifestyle that we want to have in the future, one that is sustainable. Thank you.
I am a resident of this city. Steve Maskell. I'm a resident of this city for 35 years. I came up from Huntington Beach with my family, very young at that time and now well grown. And I have a couple of, first of all, the vision statement I thought was just fantastic, wonderful. But I put education in there as part of the story. One of the reasons why people come here is we've got excellent schools, and that should be emphasized forever. Now, speaking of life here in the city, a couple things. I'd like to see a physical bridge into Central Park. Right now, it's sort of a castle over there. You have to kind of find it. I'd like to see a way of getting into it from the downtown that's very welcoming. Right now, I don't see that as a welcoming aspect of our downtown. Secondly, or is it thirdly, I want to see in the downtown some cohesive artwork that joins all of it together. In Victoria, BC, where I have some relatives, they had a common theme of bears, and they had architects and artists build around that central concept. So as you walk through town, you could see artwork that was thematically put together. And I'd say those are the things I'd like to see. I think the city of San Mateo, I taught chemistry at Hillsdale High School for a number of years, and before that at Pescadero. So I've fully invested my family and everything in this town, and for a long time. And I think those small things would help. But the vision statement is really good. I mean, it's really excellent. I would say, again, put education in there.
Good evening, members here and staff and residents. I'm Drew, resident of San Mateo. So I got 4 points. One on the reviewing. There's a review process for the Planning Commission. I think there's also the Parks Commission and the Sustainability Infrastructure Commissions should also be reviewing it. They may not have the same voting rights, so to speak, but the Parks Commission has developed a master plan, so they have stuff, and the Sustainability and Infrastructure Committee also have big picture ideas for the city. So second, on the roles and responsibilities, I view this diagram as almost like the ideal diagram, what we would like, but the actual diagram is more of a parallel structure. I don't consider the communities in the middle of it. That, to me, that implies that we have some voting rights and stuff. I view it as it's more in parallel. We're next to the General Plan Subcommittee yourselves. We can go to the Planning Commission. We can go to City Council, we're kind of partners through this process. And so maybe it's my org chart days that I'm looking at this from an org chart standpoint. So it's not a bad diagram. I think it's almost like a goal, but it's not maybe how things will flow. Third, on kind of the outreach, I've heard this on a variety of meetings over and stuff, is I almost think about like having micro neighborhood meetings. And by that, it's almost like have a number of people rent a trailer and then use that trailer every day as your office for like a month and go to different neighborhoods, go to the schools. And it's not you have to do a big shindig with a lot of people. It's just be available and say, hey, we're going to be here today working in your neighborhood. And people can come in and walk into the trailer and talk, and there can be stuff. And from having a trailer, you don't have to set up and tear down constantly. And you can just be available. And maybe you rotate through certain staff, but it's kind of like your office is on wheels for a month, and you rotate through the city and stuff. And you try to, that's a way to get to different people. Because like on my neighborhood, I don't know that anyone is going to these meetings where I live. And in fact, I embrace a lot of diversity, but I think there's few people on my street, they don't embrace diversity, honestly. So for them to go there and give that feedback or vice versa, that's what I hear is talking about, get people involved and stuff. So fourth, I think the vision statement, the general direction it's going, the structure, it's like one page. You can kind of how you have it. I think that's headed in the right direction and stuff. It just seems, and a previous speaker talked about education. That seemed like, to me, like, wow, that's a big, maybe that's a section that, could get added. It's important for just America to keep educating people. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Keith Weber, and I will be brief. I'd like to thank everyone and anybody who worked on recrafting the vision statement. I think it's substantially better. I like its brevity, and I like the addition of the values component. But as I have written to the committee earlier this week, I have a suggestion for adding 3 little words that I think will increase the context, diversity, and the depth of the vision statement, so that it reads like this. The concept, of course, is history. So that the vision statement reads, San Mateo is a vibrant, livable, and diverse community that respects its history and the quality of its neighborhoods, fosters a flourishing economy, is committed to equity, and is a leader in environmental sustainability. So thank you.
Hi there. Hi there. My name is Garrett Reed. I'm not representing anyone. I rent in San Mateo. I think it's an amazing place. I love it here. I really like the vision statement, and I think it's awesome to see sustainability, balance and preservation, the full spectrum housing and transportation in the general plan. I think the sort of point I'd like to get across is that I think, all of us have, been thinking about climate change, and I personally am trying to reduce my carbon footprint, and I'm worried that my children won't be able to enjoy the world as we have, right? That there will be significant differences, and nature will change, or housing it'll just be different. And so in San Mateo, we already have a pretty awesome option for 100% renewable energy. You can opt into that and get fully carbon neutral energy, but I'm trying to reduce my footprint as much as possible. One thing that I would like to do in the future is be able to not own a car. Like right now, I can't exist without a car. I need a car to go to groceries. I need a car to get to work. I need a car to get anywhere, really. And I'm hoping that as we proceed forward with this, that our vision statements allows us to have transit the options that I can take, and have denser housing that will let me stay near transit locations. I'm not trying to say everything should be giant high-rises, but I do think it's important that people who want to live in denser housing have that option. I'd like to, and that's sort of my main spiel, I'd like to agree with the speaker who added education to the vision statement. To me, that seems like a good, important topic, right? Education is one of the reasons you'd want to have a family, and in a neighborhood you want to be able to bring up your kids with a good school. And then I'd also like to disagree with the speaker before me who wanted to add history. Not that history isn't important and it shouldn't be included in thought processes around decisions, but adding that as the first and foremost item in a vision statement makes every single decision more difficult to make, and I think will just complicate development going forward. And that's all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Thomas Heiser. I want to start out by saying that, for those of you who are on the City Council or the Planning Commission, I think you're seeing a lot of familiar faces here tonight. However, I'm excited because looking around, having come to a lot of those meetings, I see a lot of familiar faces, but there are certainly some new members here, some new members of our community, just like I think Garrett probably, he doesn't look familiar, so I'm happy to see a new face come out and, share his vision for what he wants San Mateo to be going forward. That said, I live and rent here in San Mateo with my wife and young son. I hope that San Mateo can continue to be an inclusive and sustainably minded community. I worry that current height limits and the emphasis on single-family homes increasingly limit who can afford to live here and force those who can't afford to live here to live automobile-oriented lifestyles. I hope that the new general plan will encourage the development of more housing to allow people to live closer to all of the opportunities available here in San Mateo, as covered under the stated values of diversity, inclusivity, and prosperity. I also hope that the new general plan will strongly emphasize active and mass transit modes of transportation to encourage San Mateans to get out of their cars. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on our vision statement?
Hello, my name is Gustavo Nose. I want to thank the Planning Commission for this wonderful vision statement. I want to especially agree with the last speaker. I think that we are too used about automobile-centered lifestyle. I disagree with certain previous speakers that they don't like bicycles or scooters. I think that if they are well organized and the drivers are well educated, it's an amazing opportunity for everybody to decongest the traffic from the downtown. I think that will be very nice to have a safer environment for cyclists or people that drive scooters. If we want to reduce the carbon fuels emissions in the city, and we want to really be in tune with this vision, we need to make a change in our behavior, which means walk more, travel more with bicycles, safer place to drive, to park them, and some kind even of incentive. I would love to see some incentive from the city. If you drive a bicycle, if you walk, if you have the opportunity to work and live in the city as I do, the city is supporting you. There are laws, there are regulations that help this process. So I want to thank everybody again. Thank you. Excuse me, I forget something. High limits. I really want to support the last speaker, because if we want to work and live, which means less driving, we need at least in the downtown area more building, more construction. If not, the space will not appear magically, right? So I support that too. Thank you.
I will echo one prior speaker. There are some new faces in the audience, and it is really nice to see. So thank you all for coming. We are going to turn our meeting now to a discussion within the subcommittee. And before we start, I wanted to ask fellow subcommittee members if you had anything you wanted to request as far as how we approach it, or ideas. My thought was we would take a look at the vision statement, discuss that, and then take each one of the values. Talk about each one of the values and then circle back. Does anyone have any thoughts? Cliff?
I actually think we probably ought to, we were asked to talk about outreach ideas.
Mhm.
Maybe we ought to do that quickly before it gets lost in discussion on the vision. And personally, I'm not sure I would break up vision from each value, because I think there's a lot of overlap. But people can do whatever they want on that. That's my 2 cents.
If I may, just through the chair, so one of the homework assignments for the GPS members was to come to this meeting with 3 to 5 different ideas on outreach. And so maybe we can go through that, and staff and consults. Joanna will go ahead and facilitate that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think, this is a relatively small group, and you guys are all experienced committee members. So I think if anybody wants to kick us off, that would be great. We have, I think, probably 7 different staff and consultant people here who are going to be taking lots of notes about your ideas.
Just going to talk about the outreach first, right? Okay. Well, I want to thank and slightly raise my annoyance. I think it was Nancy. Thank you very much. You stole my thunder. One of my ideas was to, as a father of a high school student, I think we should reach out to the high schools and find civics classes or some. They're the ones who are going to want to try and work and live here, possibly. So they have, I think, some valuable input. I would also consider getting input from service organizations. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of Samaritan House, but I think the Sam House staff, leadership, I think the Rotarians, these are folks who really put a lot of energy and effort into the city and aware of people with all sorts of needs, and I think could have some valuable input. And lastly, okay, you're going to cut me off, or that was... Thank you, Madam Chair. Lastly, I don't know if we actually did a mailing on this. I mean, we've done a lot of emails for people who are signed up. My wife, who is fairly well plugged in, as many people know, she's a journalist, and also being forced to live with me, she has to hear a lot about things that are going on. But she did look up and say, other than my ranting and raving, she's never heard anything about the general plan. So we never actually got a card or something, and I think that would reach out to a lot of neighborhoods. And of course, it should be at least bilingual and maybe try. I'll leave that to the staff. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Cliff. Yes, and I too did my homework. So I had similar idea to Cliff's, but let me start a little bit ahead of that because, yes, of course, Cliff. The schedule. I see that we're talking about, I think, expanded meetings was what I heard. But all I saw on the agenda was a start time. I don't know how long the meeting is supposed to last. I think people should be able to know that. It's important to know how long they're going to expect to be at a meeting. Regarding the outreach, and another thing, I saw letters, a couple of them, I guess, about starting maybe a little too early. I don't know what we can do about that. Maybe we could try starting a half an hour later and see. I know it might push out the end time somewhat. It depends on how long we're going. But if it makes it easier for people to get here, I think it might be worthwhile. So regarding the outreach, I think young people is what Cliff meant to say. And beyond the high schools, in fact, about high schools, I've been contacted recently by a young man that I met in Assemblyman Kevin Mullen's office. And he goes to Sarah High School, and they have there a political club that actually asked me to come and speak. So here's a group of people right there at Sarah High School that might be interested in taking up some of this discussion and adding some input to it. And the other high schools, I think, are also great places. I also thought about CSM. I know there's a student organization there. And and regarding these places, then I thought about, Cliff said he didn't get a mailer. Posters. Posters are a good old-fashioned way for people to see things on the street, in the windows, wherever they are, advertising the next meeting and what it's going to be about, when and where. Also, I thought about other groups that we haven't seen really represented here all that well. For instance, Asian people. I know self-help for the elderly has access to a lot of older people, but I know that they have younger people in their families. And I think if we were to speak with Roscoe, we might be able to find some way to contact some people to get some participation from that group. And Hispanics, I know Jordan Grime mentioned that he put that together. Thank you, Jordan. I'd like to see us try and do more outreach there. And I was thinking maybe there's going to be a North Central cleanup day. It might be a good day to put a table out there and try to reach some people, because when I was at that event before, I saw a lot of Spanish speakers. So I think it's right in the heart of that neighborhood. If it's at King Center, I think you have a different location coming up. But we could arrange to be wherever it's going to be at. Yeah, and those are my couple of things. Thanks.
Ramiro, would you like to hand off?
I think it'd be a great idea if we actually provided translation services at these meetings for individuals who English is not their first language, so they can be willing to participate in the conversation here as well. I do concur that our meetings tend to start a little bit early. If there's a way for us to provide having a meeting maybe on the weekend, or to help individuals who do work at night to participate in these meetings. And thirdly, I think the city has a lot of residents who have young children. So if we're able to provide some type of child care, or some type of work with a nonprofit that provides child care, that the parents can actually come to the meetings and participate while their kids are being taken care of by a licensed individual. I think by providing that opportunity for working families to participate as well.
A lot of the ideas that have been presented I had on my list, and I think they were great. I'll go over a couple of them. The schools, I think, are a great place to start. I wasn't necessarily thinking about asking students, but I think that's a good idea. But I would like to know what the parents have to think, and also just anywhere in San Mateo where groups of residents gather that normally wouldn't come to events like this. So I was thinking of, like, Little League is just starting. There's a lot of parents involved with that. We could send somebody to the Workers Resource Center and talk to some of the folks there. We have an ice rink in San Mateo where parents are usually just sitting there watching their kids skate. We have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I'm also particularly interested in ways we can reach kind of this concept of the average San Matean that would never come to an event like this. I mean, we as a group have tried for the last 6 months to get all of our friends, all of the people that we can influence involved, and I think we've done a decent job. But what else are we going to do? I like the idea it's been presented a number of times of having some sort of survey go out that's statistically significant, where we can have some sort of margin of error, and we're not just kind of guessing, we're kind of actually seeing what our residents want. I also agree that we need more events that are geared towards Latinos. That's it.
I have 4 pages to go through. That's why. Okay. So let's see. I think I had a couple of questions about engagement as a whole that I thought might be interesting to kind of frame this reset. And that was, what are the benchmarks that we're aiming to reach for the general plan? Who are we targeting, and what is the ask? So are we asking people to do specific surveys or workshops and attendance, speaker slips? I think putting some more clarity to those metrics and those targets would be helpful, so that we can track where we are with those targets. The second thing I wanted to offer as a suggestion or question is it possible to provide a more open or flexible format for community input, like people submitting videos or audios or written statements in multiple languages, and making this process as accessible and utilizing technology to its fullest. I agree with Eric. Is it worth considering designing and implementing a statistically significant survey? And if we decide not to go down that route, what is our rationale for choosing a different option? I think that we don't want to get stuck 10 steps down the road with the community saying, well, it's not statistically significant. And so I really am concerned about if we're putting all options on the table, is that an option that we should be really considering? And then I think it's also worth doing a brainstorm to identify what are the barriers to engagement and how are we intentionally going about mitigating and overcoming those barriers, like language access, like literacy levels, like access to technology. So those are things that, as we go forward, if we can clearly identify where are the hurdles, is it access to childcare, is it start times, that we're planning in a way that's addressing those barriers. In terms of the specific outreach and engagement strategies, I have many to offer. I think that we should be looking at sort of a direct customer outreach. The city has many customers and clients. We have a humongous database of registrants through Parks and Recs, our preschools, classes, services. The people enrolled in the PAL families enrolled in the PAL program, adopted drain volunteers, the graduates and registrants of the City Services Academy, our neighborhood block watch captains, all the folks who have been registered through CERT and the Get Ready Preparedness classes. These are all self-identified folks that care about our city, that are already taking time to get engaged. And we already have their contact information. I think it would be really interesting to approach past and new planning permit applicants. These are people that are already interfacing with the planning department. They probably have some really interesting thoughts to share about planning. What are the hurdles? What are their challenges? As well as the extensive number of volunteers that work at the library. We also have many city employees that we could tap into. We have an incredible database of registered businesses. We could work through large businesses and small businesses. There's many city employees, the county employees that are based in the city, as well as our first responders like police and fire. I also would suggest that we do some influencer outreach that would include past and current city council commissioners, school board members, committee and task board members, and even possibly the applicants, people who have self-identified in those positions or interest in those positions. Those are natural leaders. Those are evangelists, people that are already willing to serve and get involved. And it's really just about tapping into them. And we have those contacts. I completely agree with the school-based engagement, and I also concur that we need to be looking at it from 0 to 18 or whatever, whenever people graduate, 21 nowadays. There's the district English language access committees, there's the English language advisory committees, the PTA councils, the college activity groups, the Black Parents Association, Parent Education Nights, Student Council Government, the San Mateo County Youth Commission, the 4Cs licensed preschools and daycares, the district preschools. All of these agencies also have social media, they have listservs, they have client bases, the teachers unions. And then I have a whole long list of ways that we can leverage existing networks and interest groups. We have a library foundation. We have the San Mateo Foster City Education Foundation. We have numerous local unions we could be tapping into. We have Facebook groups that are based in San Mateo. We have retirement communities and housing, transportation, and childcare advocates, realtors and developers, the neighborhood and block associations. We even have the garden center clubs, Rotary, Downtown Association. I'm supposed to read all of this, so that is in public record. Chamber of Commerce, the NAACP, San Mateo County Pride Center, I also concur that we should be looking at opportunities for producing posters and printed materials and flyers. There's numerous city-sponsored events that are planned. What kind of cross-promotion opportunities are there? Do we need to be tabling there? Do we need to have flyers there? Do we need a QR code that's on posters so that people can easily just, scan and go directly to the survey? Online, there are also many opportunities. Why do we not have information directly on the homepage of the City of San Mateo about the general plan? There's a scrolling image that we could have information there that links directly to the survey or the Strive San Mateo website. Same thing with Parks and Rec. We could leverage integration with the online formats there through the process of registration at checkout. Thank you for registering for this preschool, and will you follow up to do this survey? Let's see, pop-up links, banners, checkout pings. And then in terms of connecting with underserved communities, I would again ask that the city delve into its own database. We have many city residents that participate in fee-subsidized preschools as well as recreation programs. We have their information. We can be contacting them very easily. The Youth Diversion Program through PAL is another great resource, as well as the ESL City Government Academy. And PCRC, a local nonprofit, works very well and very successfully with many underserved communities. We could work with them. There's also an immigrant forum that's based, that's countywide, that includes many social service organizations. I wanted to point out the Community Handbook of 2019. There's a directory of service organizations that are based in the city of San Mateo, and as well as many that serve San Mateo city residents that we could be tapping into. This information is out there, and it's just a matter of connecting the dots. And I hope that we also have a chance to talk about what ways that we can make planning more understandable. That was another part of our homework. So I'll pass the mic. It's been a long time.
And on anything that I hadn't heard already. One suggestion would be to tap into the volunteer groups. There's National Charity League, there's kids at schools who are looking for volunteer hours. And I think to do some of the legwork, I love the idea of the posters. Maybe we are engaging some of these students in helping us to get the word out in a physical way. There is the leadership program through the Chamber of Commerce. They also have a high school group that I think would be worthwhile in looking into. There are also a lot of venues I think that we can take advantage of. Walgreens has a window that they let members of the public use to get a specific message across. The mall may have some open storefronts that would be a great place to put some information on the general plan. Also, I want to make sure that we tap into private schools as well as our public schools, even out of the area, if there are San Mateo kids that attend there. And I think that everybody else mentioned, oh, you do?
One more. I don't think I heard mentioned the City Services Academy. Every year the city does. Did we mention that? Okay, thanks.
I'm glad you said it again. So, do you have enough to go on?
Thank you so much for all the ideas. And so I just wanted to mention the reason why we asked for the committee members to share our ideas is because we're actually putting together a list of community stakeholders. And so we wanted these ideas so that we've already started it, and so we want to be able to supplement that and beef that quite a bit. One other thing, and I think this is something Amaranth mentioned, is this committee, the communications that the members have at this committee is subject to the Brown Act, and that covers all communications, both oral communications, phone. There's also serial communications where one person calls another person, and so in terms of all forms of communications that GPS members, General Plan Subcommittee members have, it's subject to the Brown Act. And so if you don't know what that is, go ahead and Google it. But one of the things that we had asked folks to do is do their homework and bring those ideas. And then if you have written, like Amaranth had quite a few things that she wanted to be sure to cover, please make sure to give city staff a copy of that so that we can include that, but bring it to the meeting. And so I just want to have that go into the record in terms of Brown Act. So we can go on to the next one if that's all the comments that we have for the outreach. Next on the agenda. All right. If there's no additional comments on the outreach.
Okay, so my thought was that just as sort of a broader context, most people in my generation and below have never had a civics class. And so just their civics is not taught in general public schools. And this might be shocking to some who actually did benefit from those classes, but it's true. I'm 40 years old, and pretty much 40-0 civics is not taught in schools and in public schools, which is where I went to schools, and so people have a very low level of understanding of municipal government, and so I think that there's a big lift here in terms of how to make these issues understandable, because there's so much embedded education and knowledge needed to understand how city governments work. But from the specific issues, tackling some of the specific issues that are coming out of the general plan in terms of the decision points, I think that there are some questions I had that I hope could guide and address some of the public's understanding or misunderstanding or lack of understanding about how all of this works. So these are the questions. How is infrastructure funded, planned, and implemented in our city? What are the short and long-term infrastructure work plans? What is the breakdown of those plans, funded versus unfunded? And how are projects prioritized? People have a lot of concerns and questions about infrastructure. What do we need to know to even have those productive conversations about how infrastructure works in the city? Another question is, how are community benefits determined for development projects? So we have many, many people coming up here and asking, I don't see any direct benefit to these new developments. And I think the question that begs the question, how are community benefits determined? What are those community benefits? And is there visibility to this process and publicly accessible reports on the outcomes, what's promised and what was actually delivered? How does the city work with the school district for planning and community development? How are the jurisdictions and funding streams different, and what opportunities are there for resource sharing and collaboration to address transportation, circulation, community facilities, parks, and housing? I hear a lot of things in the community like, why did the city put in $1 million light project downtown when the teachers aren't getting paid enough? These are total misunderstandings about how funding works, and how services are created, and who makes what decisions. In what ways are the city working to improve public transportation options and alleviate traffic? And what do we need to get faster results? So everyone's complaining about traffic. I mean, it's a known problem. I don't think there's enough knowledge, public knowledge out there to understand or understanding about what the city is doing about that currently and what's planned. Also, I think basic fiscal knowledge about the primary revenue sources for the city and what is the outlook for the city's financial health. Many people have no idea about the declining retail tax revenue and the increasing unfunded pension liabilities. And I think that that's important for people to understand the financial picture of the city to contextualize some of these discussions. What strategies have been successfully tested and implemented to preserve and produce affordable housing? What are the barriers and limits to these strategies, and how does the city foresee these strategies evolving? What is the city's response? What is our working thesis on how we're dealing with these questions, and what our knowledge is to date on the solutions that we have tried? And then I do think, because the big elephant in the room is height and density, is it possible, or has the city done an analysis of Measure P? And is it possible to pursue an option of producing a fair and impartial evaluation of this policy to date?
Are we all going to go around? And yeah, I wasn't planning on talking too long on this, and I won't. But I would just say that, these are really good questions, and I wonder if our planning commissioners could answer all these questions, because this is really getting down into the weeds. They're very important. But the way I read this is, how do we get the average San Matean citizen to realize how important this is, and how do we get them involved? And I think we need to more simplify it, and maybe just talk a little bit more about why is planning important, and why are the stakes of this revision of a general plan so important, and why they should get involved in trying to keep it. If they want to get the answer to these questions, I highly recommend taking the City Services Academy, and they might get half of them answered, and it will be a great experience. But I think that we need to be realistic here in how we're trying to get, the end goal is getting more participation and more passionate participation.
I think in addition to that is simplifying it and also providing it in multi-languages to represent the actual individuals and the residents who live here in San Mateo. So, yeah.
Those comments. Before we jump into the vision and values, I did want to just get the subcommittee's feeling on whether or not you would like to change the start time to 6:30, or if you like it at 6, and how you're feeling about an end time. There was a comment made that there wasn't an end time. So would you prefer to leave it open-ended, or would you like to have an end time?
I'm very flexible, but I'm more flexible than most. I'm very flexible because I work remotely and from home, so I can be here whenever.
So I'm just trying to be considerate of some writers that I saw. And it's true in this day and age, people commute from farther away places. And so I think we might want to at least try having a meeting a little later and see if that improves turnout. In terms of the end time, I'm open to taking the time necessary to do whatever it is we're meeting on.
I like the idea of if perhaps attempting to have one of these on a weekend. I think that might be helpful for folks that can't make it on the weekdays. They might have kids or whatever reason. In terms of the end time, I go back and forth because I think that we need to take as long as it takes, but we also need to be respectful to our audience's time and everybody else's. So I guess I would prefer having a generous absolute stop time where we're not going to go over, and we probably shouldn't, but at least we have a part where somebody watching from home knows they can turn it off and they're not going to miss anything.
I would be in favor of pushing it to 6:30 or even 7 o'clock, and going till, I don't know, 10 is, I think, a generous amount of time.
Okay. I agree. To push it to a later start time to give individuals who work off site or out of the city ample time to come. I was going to be more generous, so I was going to say no later than 11 or 12.
The 6:30 start time and then having a hard stop at 9:30. It would be maybe the first hour was a little fluid to allow for people to come in late if they needed to. Ramiro and I were talking this week about maybe the benefit of having a daytime meeting for maybe moms who are at home, and if there was childcare available, if we were able to reach that segment of the population. So that's a possibility for maybe a 2-hour meeting during the week as an option.
Through the chair, I totally agree with that. And I was just thinking, if we don't have an end time, that's usually not good practices. That's usually gives the incentive to not be succinct and keep rambling on. I think that if we have it, albeit even if it's 3 hours, I mean, it should not take longer than 3 hours. That will at least give us a time where, okay, we need to get it done by then. And I think that will give everybody incentive to be brief.
Hello? Okay, so I think I agree with the chair. 3 hours is probably enough, 6:30 to 9:30. The weekends I'm concerned about because so many people have things that they do. They only have 2 days off, and they have things that they do as a family together. I'm not sure we're going to get a lot of people there. So you have to be very careful with the timing on a weekend.
I'll make that more consensus-like. I think 6:30 to 9:30 sounds great. And through the chair, I'm ready to talk about the vision. Are we going to go there?
Just wanted to get consensus on some times. And then we're going to jump right in. Okay. So let's chat about the vision, shall we? Cliff, why don't you start us off and give your thoughts on the vision statement as it stands?
Through the chair, if I could. So I mentioned earlier in the presentation that when you guys feel ready to start making changes to the vision statement, we had this idea that we might try to do it on screen, because I think we're going to hear some different ideas. We want to make sure that we're capturing them accurately. And as Julia said, we're hoping to take this to the Planning Commission and the Council in relatively short order. So we want to make sure that we're hearing you accurately and we're capturing your input accurately. So we're going to try changing it on screen. But I think if you want to, you might also want to start out by just kind of talking or starting getting your words going a little bit. So we're not going to necessarily try to capture everything you say, but when you're ready to say, okay, I think between the words the and, we should add this word. If you can be really clear with us about the specific changes you're proposing and what words you would like to use or replace, that would be really helpful to us. And we don't have to dive right into that, but I want to try it and see how it works. And if it doesn't work, we can abandon this idea.
So are you envisioning more of an open tossing out? I was going to see if maybe people had a general comment on that statement. Yeah. So you're thinking you would rather have it be tossing out of ideas just randomly?
I think exactly what you're saying. I think for however works best for the subcommittee, we can kind of start off with open comments, and then you can direct us to make specific changes. Or
to maybe go around the group and have them make a general comment, and then for people who want to make specific changes, you can toss that out. Mm-hmm. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah. Through the chair, I would love to hear everybody's comments before we start messing around with that. I think would just be a little bit more helpful to say, well, before Cliff changed it, I liked this.
Yeah, great point.
I agree with Eric, particularly if his changes go in before mine. We got to go with it. Okay, true to my troublemaking past, I'm going to probably be a little bit of a hybrid answer to what you're doing, but I will keep it brief. I thought it was great. The new format is fantastic. I don't have any strong thoughts on the vision itself, but the values that are reflected in the vision, I found there were just a few things that I thought I'll call them high-level concepts. I agree it's aspirational. I thought there were a few that would be important to include one way or another, and I have ideas of where, but I'm not wedded to those, so I'll hold the drafting off till later. One is the phrase or concept of quality of life, and this one I will tell you where it probably goes. It's under prosperity, because we talk about economy, but there's more to quality of life than just the economics of it. So I think that might be something in there. I'm a little concerned about traffic congestion, infrastructure. I know we're at the aspirational level. It might be just making the qualified transportation as effective transportation, something like that. I think the concept needs to go in here. Maybe that also goes under balance and in prosperity, effective transportation. More important than that, actually, I think something was missing is the concept of recreation. This is a city plan, and what the city does, we help massage the marketplace, the private marketplace, but what we do often provide is recreation. That would be an item I would probably add under prosperity, is something we do. And lastly, and I don't know where I'd fold this in, but the idea, and this maybe goes at the next level of goals, but under vision and values, the idea, we have neighborhoods already in there, which I think is great, but also I think the concept of a vibrant downtown and business community, it's somewhat buried under the concept of services and jobs, but it's actually not that we all work here, but that we're not a bedroom community alone. And I think that's something that should be preserved as a value. And that's it for now.
Thank you. When I look at this page, which I think is very well done, I do like it. I think it's very inclusive. It's open. It speaks to good aspirational values looking toward the future, which I think is probably one of the most important things that this needs to be doing. One thing I would add to it, the vision itself I think is great, but when we're looking at the part where it talks about balance, we always talk about the jobs and housing imbalance. Well, so we talk about housing here, but we don't mention jobs. So I'd like to see us somehow get the word jobs in there in contrast to the concept of housing. Transportation choices are good. We need that in there. But somehow the jobs aspect, the word, should get stuck in there in some context. And that's really all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Romero?
I concur with some of the other members. I do like the vision statements. There are certain things that's missing in the values. I think under the values, under balance, we talk about housing and also transportation, but we don't talk about preserving open spaces, our parks and our recreational fields and things like that. So that's something I want to see maybe also incorporated in our vision. That respects the quality of our neighborhoods, open spaces, and economy. So I think an integration of more open spaces in some of our values and mission statement will be great.
I was very pleased with the revision. I really wanted to feel it in my gut and in my heart and in my head, and that it hit all of those places for me. And so I was very, very happy with where we arrived. For me, there were a couple of concepts that I felt were not included or were too subtly, like too much of like an undertone. And one of them is health. I really believe that health is a very important framework and lens to assess a community. There's the health of the community from a biological standpoint, from a physical standpoint. There's a health of community from an economic standpoint, and as well as a connectivity and social health. And so I really feel like that is an important concept and potentially could be considered a value that we hold. That I would like to discuss or consider. I I agree with Clifford about, and other members who mentioned the lack of open space and recreation. I would just add to that the concept of art. The arts are foundational to every civilization. Music and dance, the soul of our community, is something that needs to be elevated and visible in our vision and values. There's seeing something in a movement, in activity, through dance or music or physical art. It speaks to who we are, and so I hope that we can find a way to include the arts and culture as statements and as well. Those are my two high levels.
Thank you. I thought these vision and values was just absolutely outstanding. When I got the packet and I was pulling it out, I was kind of like going like this, looking at it, and I really felt it that this was it hit the mark. It's hard to get this right on the first pass, but it's even harder to kind of change course and admit that we weren't going in the right direction. So that's just a huge kudos to staff and this committee and the public for setting a course correction, because I think we're definitely on the right course now. I kind of see this as kind of like a haiku poem in that it's kind of harder to keep it short as opposed to writing a bunch of stuff. So like every kind of word matters. I have a lot of I concur with a lot of the ideas that were already said, but the one thing I just wanted to point out that's that I haven't heard is that I had one problem with the word livable in the vision, and the reason is because it's like if you go to a restaurant that has good food, you don't want to eat edible food. If you buy a car, you don't want a drivable car. So livable, I just didn't really feel like it added much personally, and it was interesting because I had my wife take a look at it, and that was the first thing she said is like, why is it there, and why do you have edible and drivable next to it? One thing, a couple of our public speakers mentioned why isn't education here, and I had some thoughts on that. I go back and forth because I think obviously we all value education just like we value health, but I wonder, there's a different school district that's kind of in charge of education. So I was thinking maybe as a compromise to say we value our schools. It's kind of like, I know it's a subtle difference, but this city is not doesn't have any responsibility whatsoever educating our kids. So that was just one thought I want to throw out there. I like the idea of having something there and about quality of life. I know that that's a fuzzy term, but so is equality. And I like the idea of having somewhere recreation and the cultural arts. I agree with Ammo on that one. That's something that we should aspire to bring people together more as a community.
I also had that wow factor, Eric, when I opened it up and I read it. Okay, we're getting somewhere here. I thought that our vision, I spoke with staff about this, the portion is committed to equity. One thing about that is it encompasses so many ideas. So I think that's a really great part of it, that it's very inclusive of a lot of different aspects. I would like to see under the balance section, thoughtful historic preservation. And I use the term historic, even though San Mateo is made up of mid-modern, they're made up of, the 1800s, lots of different structures and lots of different homes and neighborhoods reflect different eras of San Mateo's history. So I really do hope we can preserve some of those personalities of the neighborhood. And I did think that education would fit into the balance because I was looking at the full spectrum of housing and transportation choices, but we also have educational choices. We have public schools with with magnet schools and theme schools. We have private schools. We have religious schools. So I can see how education could fit into the full spectrum aspect of that. Does that give you all a start? And so would you like us to go through each value?
I mean, I'd certainly defer to the chair and the other subcommittee members. I think what I'm taking away from this is that there is a lot of consensus. I've heard several people mention the need to find a way to acknowledge recreation and open space, something about arts and culture, maybe something about schools or learning or education or something that responds to that. And so I think we can definitely accomplish those things, but I've also appreciate the acknowledgement that it's hard to keep it short. And so when health is important, we want to add something about health. Downtown is important. We want to add something about downtown. So what I kind of want is for you guys to grapple with this a little bit in the way that your team did in drafting it for you, and try to help us make some of these decisions, or really, as Eric said, every word matters. So exactly which words we're going to use and where they're going to go, I really want to make sure we're reflecting your input accurately. And my idea about a way we could do that is to do it in front of you and see whether we can incorporate these. So, at the same time, I don't want this to become something like stressful or unpleasant for you. So I think if we can maybe try one of the values, like a lot of people commented on balance, for example, and see if we can kind of arrive at a way of weaving in some of these ideas in front of you and seeing whether or not we're getting it right, and whether you're comfortable with it. And if not, you can also direct us to go away and work on this behind the scenes and try to do our best to reflect what we've heard tonight. So I want to defer to your judgment as the chair and your committee members.
I think this first draft that we've seen it like this is just like I said, outstanding. I would almost like to just see what given all this feedback and you see what we struggle with, instead of making us struggle with it, I would really like to see what you came up with. I get the feeling like, when we're starting this discussion, someone's going to come up with something that's important to them, and then we're going to have to start defending it, and it's just going to get bigger fast. And so that's just what can I foresee happening, but I could be wrong.
I'd like to just add something too. I think in the interest of time and actually trying to get this done, and you mentioned we don't want to make it really wordy. Right. I would like to say that I do concur with most of what I heard. But I think we need to be careful and keep it limited. I want to add on to what Eric mentioned about the school district. We do have, between our public schools, the high school district and the elementary school district, 2 publicly elected boards of directors that manage all the business at each one of those districts. We interact with them. They talk to us. We talk to them. We cooperate on different things, but they make all the decisions there. So we can simply mention that we support our public schools, and I think that might be enough for that. So in terms of what I think you might want to clarify in terms of where there is consensus, you can just ask us, and we'll show of hands and let you know. You can count.
May I for just a second? Yeah, I agree with all that. As perhaps the only lawyer on this panel, I don't want to be get competitive on drafting. Because I do it for a living. But we won't say anything else about that. But with that in mind, actually, I'm wondering if there is a way, consistent with the Brown Act, our Brown Act obligations, for another draft to come out and for us to maybe give written behind-the-scenes input, so it isn't competitive, but you're getting some suggestions, and that you can then, publish. You can certainly publish it in the next bit of correspondence, and you can take it or not.
If I may, through the chair, we did check in with our assistant city attorney regarding communications and the different types of communications. And when those communications from the GPS members happen, there was direction that communication should occur at the meetings, and that if there is verbal, written, any other forms of communications that are in between meetings, that cannot happen because it would be inconsistent with the Brown Act.
Hello? Everybody can hear me? So one thing that we can do, just as a suggestion, we can take back your comments. Maybe we can have Joanna go through what we heard and get some consensus on behalf of the General Plan Subcommittee tonight. We'll redraft it in red line form. That red line form will then go to the Planning Commission. The GPS members could see what is being presented to the Planning Commission. You're welcome to come to the Commission and Council and also provide comments at those meetings. And you'll see the changes that were made between today and the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. So I think what I'm hearing is that the subcommittee would like for me to kind of attempt to say back to you what I've heard, and you guys will kind of indicate to me with nods or something like that that you agree with the kind of changes that I'm describing. So big picture, I think what I heard is most people are pretty comfortable with the existing vision statement. We had one comment about the word livable. So is that a word that the subcommittee would like us to put some more attention on and consider perhaps a different term?
I don't know. Livable to me means that you can get around. There are stores where you can get groceries. You can go to the mall and shop. You can go to the park and hang out. That's how I kind of defined livable.
I actually have no problem leaving it in, but I also have no problem deleting it as long as the concept of quality of life pops up under values somewhere, as opposed to just economic value, which is very important, but quality of life down there. Then I don't care if it's a vibrant and diverse community. It hopefully is livable, but if it's vibrant, what's that? You don't want to know. I spent a lot of time in Jakarta, Indonesia.
So,
Tidak bagus.
if I may, through the chair, so one thing to maybe consider as we're thinking about the vision statement, and sort of how that vision statement relates to the different elements of the general plan. So we have land use, parks and open space, conservation, safety. And so thinking about the word livable, there are communities, in California where it's not safe, and so that is actually an impact, to how that community is actually perceived as being livable or not. So I think, one of the things that may be, as part of the exercise of discussion is sort of see how these words relate to the different elements. And so just as a reminder, and I'm working off the top of my head, the different elements of the general plan includes land use, circulation, there's a housing, there's urban design, which is unique to San Mateo, conservation, open space, safety, and noise. And so as you go through the different words, maybe that you can sort of think about how that word might relate to the different elements. And sometimes it could have different meanings for different elements. And so, for example, I think parks and recreation was brought up, open space. That could mean different things in different neighborhoods in San Mateo. And so, some neighborhoods in San Mateo may have adequate, you have a larger park versus another part of San Mateo, maybe, the park infrastructure isn't quite the same. Just as an example.
Where does the downtown plan fit into this? Because somebody mentioned the downtown plan, and I know that there's going to be a whole separate process, but
So when we started the downtown plan effort, and I recognize some of the faces of the community who were here during those community meetings. We were asked at the time by the council to begin conversations with the community about density and height. And during the downtown plan meetings, we heard from community members that density and height really shouldn't just be limited to just the downtown area and the downtown discussions. It really is a citywide sort of topic and should be raised, and discussed more broadly. And so that's part of the reason for starting the general plan update effort. And so we actually, with the general plan contract and reaching out to the downtown plan consultants, we've actually halted the downtown plan project so that we can sync up with the general plan discussions. So having the broader community discussions about density, height, everything that's been sort of raised by multiple members tonight regarding that issue. Once those community conversations happen, then we pick back up with the downtown plan. But if you're asking for specific schedules, we're not quite there yet.
You were talking about the circulation and housing and all that other stuff, how they roll up into the general plan. I was just asking, how does the downtown plan roll up into it, because you didn't mention it. That's all.
So I've heard kind of both that livable is okay and that it would be okay without livable. We want to try to find a place for quality of life.
I'd like to add that I think livable is a good catch-all kind of word, right? Can mean lots of different things. It's positive in this context. And I think it helps us keep our vision more of a what rather than a how.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'm seeing some nodding heads. I'm going to move on. One other comment that I heard about the vision statement itself was a proposal that maybe open space is a concept that's important enough here to add at that vision level as opposed to or in addition to finding a place for it under the values. Any reactions? I'm seeing shaking heads. I'm seeing some nodding heads and some shaking heads. And some... The question is about, do you want to add the concept, not necessarily exactly these words, but something about the concept of open space to the vision statement level? Okay. All right. That's a little bit too specific for the vision. Okay. That's what I'm hearing. Thank you. So I'm going to then, I think I did not hear a lot of other statements about the vision statement itself, that very first sentence at the top of the page. Art was definitely mentioned several times. Is that something that you guys want to put in at the vision statement level? Okay. All right. All right. So and then I'm moving on to the vision. And right now I think we're not really looking at any changes to the vision statement itself based on what we're seeing. Okay. So then the values, I think one of the values that several people mentioned a lot is this, the value of balance, the second one on our sheet. And as we start to look at it, I just want to point out that it's already starting to inch pretty close to the bottom of the page here. So to the little scales there. So but it seemed to attract a lot of attention. So this is kind of an interesting challenge to think about if this is the right value to be the home for some of these new ideas. Some of the things that I heard mentioned specifically in relation to balance were saying something about jobs, saying something about preserving parks and open space, saying something about, let's see, I think, historic preservation. So those are some specific phrases or ideas that folks proposed in connection with this balance value. Any of those changes that we want to really try to find a place for in that value specifically?
To the chair, please. Since I mentioned jobs, I think that since it's only one word, I can see exactly where I would suggest it goes.
Okay.
People can look at this and think about that, but it would say, we seek to balance jobs, comma, well-designed development and thoughtful preservation. Yes.
What does it mean to balance jobs?
Well, we're always talking about the jobs and housing imbalance.
So
balancing jobs with the other things we're talking about. Well-designed development. Okay. Full spectrum of housing. They're all in the same thing. It only lacks jobs. That's it. It was we seek to balance jobs, comma, well-designed development, and thoughtful preservation. Okay, we can add historic, although it's in here in another place.
well, let's stay focused on the jobs question for a second, if we could. We do mention jobs under prosperity, but that is not necessarily mentioning balancing jobs specifically.
Sorry, what was that again?
Oh, I was just observing that we mentioned jobs under the prosperity value. So jobs have a mention here.
Balancing jobs
but
with
not
housing
balancing
is a big issue.
specifically. Right, right. I understand that. That's what I was saying, the second part. It's not about the balance question specifically. Okay. So there's a proposal to add the word jobs, or maybe jobs with, after balance. We seek to balance jobs with well-designed development, etc. Nods? Shaking?
I like the concept, but I just don't think I just don't think that's the area. I mean, we talk about it in prosperity. I don't think we need to mention jobs twice, personally. And I definitely don't think it needs to be the first thing we mention when we talk about balance.
Okay.
Also, I would be interested in adding the word thoughtful historic preservation to that.
I just wanted to comment real quickly on the jobs. We can also add, when we get to the goals, policies, and programs part of the general plan process, a goal more specific to jobs, housing, balance, if that's where the community wants to go. So I consider more of that a how versus a vision statement, value statement. If the GPS committee sounds okay with that, then we can kind of hold off on that and come back to it during the goals and policies conversation.
Okay, great. So moving on, in the balance statement, then we have a proposal to add thoughtful historic preservation. I think we also heard some comments from GPS members about open space preservation. So maybe a couple different types of preservation that are being touched on here in balance or have the potential to be touched on.
Through the chair, I think that the open space is exactly like the jobs. It's a little bit more of like a how, but it's like the next level of whatever we're talking about. That's the next level of this, of like what's important to us and how we get there. That's, to me, I kind of think, because we want just great spaces. Sometimes it's going to be open space. Sometimes it's going to be, more activated, but not quote unquote open. So that's, I think that falls under how as well.
Okay. All right. And what about historic?
You know what? I mean, actually, now that we're talking about other open space and preservation of everything, it might be better left more general as thoughtful preservation.
My concern with the word historic is that it's just very backward looking. I like the, I went back and forth with that. I really like the letter that we received by Mr. Weber, but I just want to make sure that this is 2040. So that's just my hesitation. I could go either way.
I concur, if I may. I think preservation, I have no trouble with historic preservation, but I think preservation that's used here subsumes not only historic preservation, but neighborhood preservation, and it would also, quite frankly, include what little open space we have preservation. So I like it more general myself.
Okay.
It definitely should be spelled out at the goals level, the next one down. I would agree there, too.
Right.
With keeping the preservation or thoughtful preservation broad. I'm a history buff, and I do think that as we look forward, it's also important to look back. And so one of the places I was thinking about adding the nod to history was in diversity, to respect the history, experiences, contribution, and aspirations of people of all ages, blah, 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 blah. That would be my recommendation about in terms of integrating the word history and the concept of history.
Any other thoughts on that? So the proposal was that if the GPS would like to find a way to incorporate the concept of history in here, one place to do that would be in the diversity value. by adding that we respect the experiences, history, contributions, and aspirations of people, etc.
I don't.
And it's not really applying to structures.
Yeah, and I think that's the original. That was kind of the. I mean, our history of diversity, if you go back far enough, is not that great.
It isn't.
Um,
It isn't good in some areas. Yeah. I would be down with approaching the history in the goals.
Okay. All right. So just to be clear for the subcommittee, I'm also starting a list here of goals and things that we want to make sure that we address at this immediate next level, kind of under the vision and value statements, including things like jobs, housing balance, open space preservation, and historic preservation. So far, things that I've captured that we want to make sure we address. All those are extremely appropriate for the goals level of your general plan. Okay. Good. So then I think we've another concept that was mentioned is health. And I think if I heard correctly, maybe this is even could be a new, at the level of an additional value that's not here now, or finding a place for it in the values that are here now.
I also see health as a quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So would quality of life be more overarching as its own value?
When I've marked this thing up, and in my mind, under prosperity, when we're cultivating a thriving something, we talk about economy, and that's where I would have inserted or would insert quality of life. And I agree that health and actually safety are two important, I guess I'll call them values, but I think they're subsumed under quality of life, though we're going to have to revisit them as we go down to different other levels. That's my 2 cents.
I'll just add that while safety, I think our city has a very strong role in. Health is a little bit different, in my opinion, because there are some things at the city level we can do to promote health, but there's a lot of things that we can't. I'm wondering if we can maybe use an adjective like healthy or something. When I think of health, I think of like health care and providing insurance and things like that, and I don't know if that's something we want to tackle at the municipal level.
Thanks. So I have a different twist on that. At the top where it says our vision, San Mateo is a vibrant, livable, and diverse and healthy community. I like the word healthy, I think, a little better there. Yeah, vibrant. Okay.
Nice. Very sneaky. I see what you did there.
Where's my gavel?
I was thinking it could be, we strive to include everyone in decisions for a shared and healthy, sustainable future.
Or shared, sustainable, and healthy.
I'm actually
Okay.
going to agree with Rick a little bit, though. I think it probably goes better up under vision, but that is a way to get it in there because it also it qualifies community rather than other things, and that's really we're talking about a healthy community, the people, the healthy. Also, and I'm going to toss out and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if under prosperity. You insert the word recreation somewhere, that includes it's a city service. It includes open space. It also has the health component. I mean, it's something that the city makes available. We have for 150 years, and will hopefully continue to. So that just seemed to be a place that would catch a few of these items.
Okay. So I've heard that sounds like most people are comfortable with healthy as opposed to health. And I saw a lot of nodding heads about adding it to the vision statement and the list of characteristics of San Mateo as a community: vibrant, livable, diverse, and healthy. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then there's also a kind of an added support for this concept about health or healthy under the prosperity value, finding a way to add recreation. And it seems like, although Cliff, you didn't say this specifically, we could say something about different types of home, jobs, services, and recreation for current and future generations would be one possibility that I could see. Sure. Okay. Any thoughts on the adding the concept of recreation under prosperity?
Yeah, I'm okay with that, and I actually see it in terms of where I would put it, under where it says different types of homes, jobs, recreation, and services, because recreation is a service.
Mm-hmm.
So then services includes all the other services.
I don't know if we discuss the cultural arts, but would that be part of kind of recreation? I mean, when we're saying arts, I don't think we're just talking about visual arts. We're talking about movement and music and things like that. So, I don't know, because when I think of recreation, that's another thing I think about. Not just something Parks and Rec puts on, but how we as a community are bringing people together.
Could arts go under diversity?
Yeah, I think arts is definitely an important topic that several of you raised. I think we have pretty strong agreement on this concept of recreation under prosperity, and then maybe we can be ready to move on and talk about where's a good home for arts or arts and culture or cultural arts in one of these values. Very interested in your thoughts on that.
I think arts and culture fits under diversity. Because art is diverse just by definition. Various cultures and various people view art differently.
I'll just say in my notes, certainly could be a shortcoming in my notes, but I think this was kind of a concept that folks who brought it up mostly tended to just kind of throw it out there as something that you'd like to see in here. And I think it's probably a sign of how important it is and how all-encompassing it is that there's not necessarily only one specific place where we can see it fitting. So I think there's probably room for it under several of these different values.
Yeah, I think it probably actually fits under the prosperity rubric, just the way we've listed stuff. I personally think it's probably subsumed by recreation. I know it doesn't sound it, but it's, Parks and Rec does the public art, culture as well, all the plays and so forth we have here. But maybe not. I mean, if we wanted to add it as another bullet point in there, that's okay too.
Are you letting your association with Parks and Rec biased here?
8 years of the commission, you bet. And now that's all he knows. So I think I do see it under diversity because diversity is where cultures go. Okay, and we're talking about arts and culture. Cultures from all over the world bring arts from all over the world. And I think it might fit in better as a goal.
Okay. So would you add a mention to it under diversity as a value or leave it for the goals level of discussion?
Okay, so people of all ages and abilities may come and cultures maybe instead of background? Or add different.
Well, I think we're talking about different things now. You were talking about cultural things, and what I was trying to get across, and I think Emma was trying to talk about as well, is like arts, like cultural arts, like music. And that, there will be diverse cultural arts, but I mean, I don't think we need recreation and cultural arts, but they're very similar. I just want to make sure we're not. recreation can be just sitting in Central Park. It can be taking a class at our rec centers. But I really think one thing that our city is lacking is more cultural arts, more music, more Shakespeare in the Park and things like that. And I know that I'm talking about how, but this is something that I've heard time and time again that's very important to our community. So maybe
we'll come to our 9-week music festival this summer, put on by the Parks and Rec Department. I'm just saying. And the Park Foundation, of which I am chair. Okay.
And you're a lawyer too?
And I am, yes. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. So I go ahead, Alma.
Well, I would like to propose that we ask the consultants to grapple with this a little bit, because I really do think that I really think it's an important concept, and it's worth taking a hard look at it, and seeing if it can be integrated at the vision level or the values level.
Okay. Consensus to make the consultant do it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
I think we'll see what Joanna produces for us. But one other item that I don't know if you're going to get to or not was, and I heard this from the public, we read it in a lot of things, it's the congestion, the traffic flow concept that, I know we're at the vision level, but that's the best I could come up with was inserting the adjective effective in front of transportation. There might be something far better way to do it, but the idea of that our vision of the future is not just to have diverse transportation, which we want, but we actually want people to be able to get in and out of their driveways and get to their jobs and get to and from the new homes that we'll be developing. So that's trying to figure out where to put that in there.
That makes sense to me because diverse transportation is almost dictating the how, because who knows, maybe in the future there's one way everybody gets around and it's not diverse, but it's an environmentally friendly way to do it. It makes diverse transportation is just, it's kind of very now thinking, I think, and right. I'm agreeing with you. Yes, yes.
Okay, and I think the specific proposal was about under balance in front of the word transportation, right? Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing any violent disagreement there.
Hold on.
Yes. Yes.
So with a full spectrum of housing and multiple transportation choices? I don't know. Maybe that's a how. So, yeah. The truth is we need multiple choices, okay? So we'll get there.
Effective.
Right.
Not right now.
Well, I think if you have a full spectrum, then hopefully you have more than one choice.
I know there's questions about the word livable, but for me, sort of the word livable connotes effective transportation, affordable housing that we can get from our house to the shopping center, and in whatever way that is easiest and most efficient. And so, I know that there's questions about this word livable, but for me, that concept of sort of effectiveness and safe and accessible and affordable was all encompassed in livable and sort of trickled through these specific channels.
Okay. And I think we ended up sticking with livable, so that is still here. Okay, I think the last thing that we may want to touch on is just this concept of education or schools or something. I definitely, certainly as someone who does understand a little bit about local government, I very much understand the point that there are separate governing agencies that are in charge of your elementary and your high school and your community college districts here in San Mateo. At the same time, we know that education and schools are an important part of the community, of any community. So your thoughts on whether we want to find a place for this as a concept or not in the vision and values.
I would be in favor of of including it as a concept, and it could be the word schools or it could be the word learning. Through the Parks and Recreation Department, we are providing preschool. That is a form of very formative early learning that the city is in fact doing, and because of because we need to think about the city in a holistic way, and all the necessary coordination with the school district, I think that it's worthwhile to integrate at least the concept in probably the values section.
I completely agree. I mean, if we're going to talk about transportation, they are managed by different entities as well.
Mm-hmm.
So to say we can't include education it wouldn't be on par.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If the subcommittee chooses to add it, I think my personal view is the best way to do it. It would be saying something like "we value our schools" or something along the lines that way. The difference between schools and transportation and education is we also provide a lot of transportation things too. Where education, we do have some preschool programs, but again, as Rick said, we really do not have that much influence on how our kids are educated in our schools, other than proving measures for Texas. So I just feel very uneasy about putting it too high, like making it seem like we can do something when we really can't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a place to say that we value our schools. Any thoughts on the specificity of schools versus learning versus education? Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
but they aren't our schools, right? That's why if we use education, it could mean a lot of different things.
Okay.
Agree with Ellen that the word education is very broad. In fact, I mean, you could say that the pottery classes through the rec center is a form of education. You could say that this meeting is a form of public education. And so I think that it's a very narrow definition to apply the word education to only encompass the public school districts.
Okay. Okay. I think I've covered all of the comments that I heard. Was there anything that anybody mentioned that I didn't capture or that you wanted to make sure we get in here? Okay. Thank you very much to the subcommittee for your valiant work here. I really appreciate it. You gave us great direction and great feedback in strengthening the vision and values. So thank you very much.
And thank you to you and staff for bringing forward such a great document. Does anyone in the subcommittee have any comments or questions? We are adjourned.